Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, v'tishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei.
Amen.
So, we're doing Torah Temimah today, and he is going to make reference to a statement that actually occurs quite often. I've come across the statement many times, and it's one where it says, the rabbis say essentially, and it has to do with a curse, a type of curse, and you'll see, but it has to do with decent, really decent behavior, and that the need to do that decent behavior. So let's keep going on here. All right. Kimal Aharis. Let's take a look. Actually, I'll take a look quickly at the verse. Okay, it's back here, right? And it says, Vayomer Elokim leNoach. God said to Noach, Kates kol basar ba'lefanai. The end of all flesh will come before me. Ki mal'ah ha'aretz Chamas. For the earth is filled with violence, mipneihem, on account of them, right? On account of kol basar, right? All flesh. So we know that we had that discussion as to what exactly we meant by all flesh. We realize that in one context it means all living creatures, but here obviously it's referring to human beings, right? That's really what we're talking about here. And behold, I'm going to destroy them with the earth. Right. So there we go. So we had that little phrase, Ki mal'aharetz Chamas, that the earth is filled with Chamas, right, with violence. Tanya, Tanya refers to a statement that's of Tanaitic origin, meaning prior to the year 200, but not found in the Mishnah. But it's contemporary with the period of time in which the Mishnah was edited, that particular time when that information was collected and finally put in its current form. At any rate, Ma hayu chomsim. So what was it that they were stealing? Because Hamas violence is also, if you've ever had something stolen from you, you know that you feel violated, right? So what were these violations, right? Barnash, an individual, hava nafik v'ta'in kupa mlea turmasin. A Barnash, a human being, right, would go out and carry a basket filled with lupines. And I think the reason why they're specifically, they happen to have that as an example, and it's just simply an example, is I think lupines are essentially cattle fodder. We're not talking about something that's very fancy here, right? I think that's the point here. V'hayu mitkavnin, right? V'notlim pachot pachot. And they would intentionally, the people who were the people that were living at the time, right? They would get together, v'notlin, and they would steal from it pachot pachot, just a tiny little bit mishaveh pruta, that was worth a pruta. A pruta is like a penny, right? But they'd steal less than a penny's worth of those lupines, right? And of course, you'll see. Okay, let me just keep going. Davar she'eino yetzu b'dayanim. They're talking about something that you can't claim. You can't go to court with that. If you steal less than a penny's worth of something, you're not going to be taken to court for that. But the point is, if enough people do it, right, it's going to add up to something. But different individuals would do it, and that's what would happen. I'm thinking, right, that they would do these kinds of things. So now you have in mind what they were doing, that they were taking just a little bit, but they were still violating a person's property and a person's space, etc. But let's see what Torah Temimah has to say, and he has quite a bit to say about it. Here we go. Turmosin hu min kidniot. He says turmosin are a species of legume. Uvahamefarshim tarchu, and the those who explain, the commentators Tarchu, they went to great lengths. They struggled. Lefaresh kavanat she'elat Yerushalmi, because he's quoting here from the Yerushalmi. In other words, what was the violence? They tried to explain the intent of this question found in the Yerushalmi, in the Talmud Yerushalmi, the tirutzo, right, and its explanation, right. Uparshu, and they explained bederech rechoka, and they explained it in a distant kind of way. It wasn't in a clear sense, in a vague kind of way. Aval ha'emetu, but the truth is, ki ba'ad rasha zo kan b'Yerushalmi, that this particular interpretation that is coming here in the Yerushalmi, the Talmud Yerushalmi, ktsera v'chasera, it's actually abbreviated and defective. V'tzarich lomar, and in fact, you have to say, kamo shehi lefanenu b'midrash rabba kan uve zehalashon. And you have to, the way you really need to state this particular statement is the way it's in the Midrash Rabbah in Parshat Noach, right? Because the Midrash Rabbah is a Midrash based on the Torah, and it's organized according to the Parshiot of the year, b'zeh halashon, in this way. So, here we go. He says, quote, right, Ki mal'ah ha'aretz Chamas, for the earth was filled with Chamas. Ezehu Chamas. So in other words, what kind of violence? Ve'ezehu Gezel. And what kind of robbery? What kind of robbery? Amar Rabbi Chanina, said Rabbi Chanina, Chamas eino shaveh pruta. He says that when it's Chamas, so the question could be asked is, well, how do we define Chamas and how do we define Gezel, right? Gezel is also theft or robbery. So Rabbi Chanina says Chamas eino shaveh pruta. When we're talking about Chamas, we're saying that it's theft where the object stolen isn't worth a pruta. The Gezel shaveh pruta. But Gezel is when it's worth at least a penny. V'kach hayu anshe dor hamabul osim. This is a continuation of this quote, right? And so the men of the generation of the flood would do. This is what they do. Haya, right? Then what we should say is ritzono loma keshaya. The whole statement should be when he would, echad mehem, when one of them would, motzeh kupati, would take out his basket, mele'ah turmasin, filled with lupines, v'haya zeh ba v'notel pachot mishaveh pruta, and this other person would come and take less than that which is worth a penny, a pruta. Vezeba, and another one would come, v'notel pachot mishaveh pruta, and take an amount less than a penny. Ad makom, until a point, she'eino yachol lehotzio bedin. So, in other words, it was done in a way where the person who was being robbed or stolen from, couldn't take it to court. Ad kan, and that is the end of the quote from Midrash Rabbah. He Agadat HaYerushalmi. And this, in fact, is this Agadah in the Yerushalmi Shelefanenu, that is before us. V'tam hadavar b'pachot mishaveh pruta. And the whole argumentation, the whole reasoning between this whole concept of that which is worth less than a pruta, eino yotzeh b'dayanim. And that's the point. You can't take this case. You can't make a claim. You can't go to judges regarding this amount. Mishum, why? De behavata gezel kativ. Okay, sorry, de behashavat gezel kativ, because in the Torah, in Parshat Vayikra, so at the end of the Parsha of Vayikra of Leviticus, where it talks about returning something stolen, it says, Veheshiv, and he shall return. Ve'ein hashava chashiva pachot mishaveh pruta. And the truth is, to return something, if we're talking about returning something, it has to be at least worth a shaveh pruta. It has to be at least worth a pruta. Ve'yein sham lefanenu, and we're going to deal with that later on. When we get to it, we'll take a look more deeply into this idea. The tam hadavar. And here we go. And the reason she'ninshu al pachot mishaveh pruta, that the people of the generation of the flood were punished, right? They were punished for something worth less than a penny. Yesh le'omar, yesh, one can say, al pima dekaimalan, right? On something that we have an established principle, de ben Noach neherag al pachot mishen shaveh pruta, that someone who's a ben Noach, i.e., it's a nice way of saying a non-Jew, a non-Israelite, is killed for something less than a penny. In other words, that in itself, of course, is something that we have to think about. But right now, that is not where we're going to go with this. Okay, just the idea. Remember, we have to, in terms of trying to give a little bit of background on that notion, right? We know that when God created the world, ideally, the world would be created in such a way that it would be governed by strict justice. Strict justice is strict justice. And any kind of theft, even if it's worth less than a penny, is still theft. And we can also say that if we believe that we are actually created in the divine image, and that in truth, this entire universe is supported by a divine being, that we are all simply creatures, right? And that God is the one who created all of us, that our relationship with God is such that we owe God our lives, our loyalty, everything. And that ideally, if in fact we were not operating the way we needed to operate, okay, if we did not behave the way we were supposed to behave according to the divine will, our lives are forfeit. That is a concept that is still operating, in the sense that the whole idea of the system of sacrifices based on Isaac, remember Abraham bringing Isaac to the altar, is a benefit that we all have as Jews and as descendants of Abraham. But that doesn't necessarily apply to others. So there's some very challenging ideas going on here. But for the time being, it's a principle that we just need to understand for the sake of what continues, for what Torah Temimah is going to go and say further on by way of explaining what's going on here. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Kemevuar, this is actually discussed, it's clarified, but Eruvin, in the tractate Eruvin in the Talmud, Samach Bet, that's page 62a, Uva Kama Makomot, and several other places, that a Ben Noach is killed for less than a Shaveh Pruta. That doesn't mean necessarily by Jewish courts, it could mean that by the divine court. I'm not sure. As I said, there's still lots that I don't understand about this. For Imkain, however, if this is the case, Ledide, according to the Ben Noach, right, Ben Noach, Chashiva pachot mishaveh pruta. Then what is worth less than a shaveh pruta is now significant. Chashiva, it's considered kamo shaveh pruta. It is considered like something that in fact is worth a shaveh pruta le Yisrael, to an Israelite. Remember, a pruta is a penny, right? A penny. So it's saying even if it's worth less than a penny to a Ben Noach, it's equivalent to something worth a penny or more for an Israelite. And this is despite the fact that a theft of less than a penny still is not something that is going to be arbitrated by judges, mishum lo plug, and that is because we don't make distinctions in terms of, generally speaking, in terms of legal processes. And making a claim, right? Having enough of a claim to take to court isn't going to make a distinction. There's no distinction between Israelites and Bnei Noach as far as that's concerned. That's the law plug. We don't make distinctions in terms of legal processes. Uveze necha baba kama right? And for this, I believe he's saying it makes sense that in Baba Kama, one of the tractates in the Talmud, Samach Bet, page 62a, Shechakru Ma Bein Gazlan Lechamsan, in the tractate, they investigate, they do an investigation of the difference, the distinction between a gazlan, a robber, lechamsan, right, to a chamsan. What is the specific distinction between those two terms? Velo amru hachiluk hameforash kan, and they did not mention the distinction that is mentioned here, that's explained here, right? Here we said that the difference between Gezel and Chamas is that a Gezel is worth a pruta or more, and a Chamas is less than worth a pruta. Okay, sorry. Hachaluk mefushash kan beYerushalmi u'Midrash Rabbah, right? And they do not, back in Baba Kama, they don't mention this distinction that is specified here in the Yerushalmi and in the Midrash Rabbah. Chamas eino shaveh pruta, that is to say, that a Chamas, it's not, he's robbed, he's stolen something that isn't worth a shaveh pruta. The Gezel shaveh pruta, and Gezel is a shaveh pruta. Ya'an, because the Begamara Chakru Bedinim Hanogim Yisrael, because there in the Gemara they were making an investigation regarding laws that apply to Jews, Yisrael, Asher Etzlo Pachot Mishaveh Pruta, with whom something that is worth less than a Shaveh Pruta, Eno Chashuv, it isn't important. V'kan Eirei B'Bnei Norach, but here, in this particular case, they're discussing a ben Noach. They don't need to make that distinction in discussing the distinction between Gezel and Chamas if they're talking about how this applies to Israelites. But here, we're talking about Bnei Noach as well here. So that's why we're discussing that distinction. V'da, and know, the alpi drashat HaYerushalmi shelefanenu, that according to this interpretation of the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud that is before us, yitba'er heitev, it's going to be clarified very well, ma shekatuv b'Bama Matzia memchet aleph, what is written in the tractate, the Babylonian Talmud Baba Matzia, page 48a, but onesh me, regarding the punishment where they say, Mi she'eno omed biduburo, one who doesn't keep his word, one who doesn't hold on to what they've said, doesn't keep their words and their commitments. And this is the curse that they say. This is the punishment. Mi she'para me'anshe dor hamabul, the one who punished the men of the people of the generation of the flood. He is the one, in other words, God will also hold accountable, right, from one who does not keep his word. But there it's not explained. What does the one have to do with the other? In other words, what has the generation of the flood, etc., have to do, or the punishment of the generation of the flood have to do with someone who doesn't keep his word, who doesn't mean what they say? In other words, they make a promise and they don't hold on to the promise. And the rabbis there, of course, the context is to tell us, because it's so common for people to make commitments and not honor them. We all probably can look into our lives and look at moments when we made commitments and didn't actually follow through. So I think this is a case, I would say that, I would not want to take this too literally, but what the rabbis are trying to say, before I go on with Torah Temimah's explanation, that what the rabbis are trying to do is make us realize that not holding on to your commitments is a very serious thing. It is a very serious thing. And precisely because we tend not to see it as a serious thing. Achine amru b'Gemara, right? But here they said b'Gemara, in the Gemara, Sham in the Gemara there, de Medina chayav adam la'amod b'diburo, that it's by rights, a person is obligated to stand by his word, to honor his commitments by strict justice. Mishum hen, and there's a famous drash, hen shel tzedek. It's actually in the Little Red Daily Prayer Book. And it's one of the quotes in the little early section of the morning service where they quote various citations, and the drush is there. And the question is, why does it say Efa tzedek and hin tzedek? Why does it say a righteous, in other words, an honest by honest weights and measures, that the Efa should be honest and the hin should be honest? And the comment is, wait a second. If the Efa is honest, then hin is part of an Efa. Obviously, it has to be honest. And the drush is, what it's really saying to you is your hein, that is your yes, has to be tzedek. That is to say, if you say, yes, I'll do something, you have to do it. It has to be tzedek. That's the drush he's referring to here. Ach mipnei she'en bazeh rak bitachon dvarim, but because here we're not talking actually about property, we're not talking about real estate or movable goods, we're just talking about a trust and assurance of words. Lachein ein hatvi'ah yotzet b'dayanim. You can't take that to court. And here we're talking about where you cannot show actual damage. We know that, for example, even in any kind of situation where it's simply a matter of words, but if you cannot show that those words caused actual damage to someone, you can't take it to court. All right? Because it's simply holding to your word. And if you don't show, as I said, that there's some kind of physical damage, then you can't do it. Okay, Bart, I'm sorry if you've had your hand up for a while. Please forgive me. Yes, please, let me take your point or your question. Can you unmute? Bart? Hello?
I was muted. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it just coincidence that Chamas means violence?
Yes, I know people ask that question always, right?
Yeah.
I don't know enough Arabic, but my guess is no, from what I understand, there is no relationship to the Arabic word or to whether or not Hamas is actually an acronym or what.
Yeah,
But
it's an acronym. I'm sure of that.
yeah, but I don't believe it has any relationship. I don't believe it does. This is what I was told, not knowing any Arabic or enough Arabic myself. But
Yeah,
I
I
know.
don't know any Arabic at all, but I remember reading
Yeah.
somewhere that it's an acronym.
Yeah.
But I also remember reading that the founder of it spent time in Israeli jails and learned Hebrew.
Yeah, could be. I mean, it certainly is an interesting connection, though,
Yeah.
if it's simply coincidental. Yes. Let me
Question
get
number two.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Talk about a penny and it being worth nothing.
Yes.
I always think about my father, and he'd go, "Oh, anytime you went to the grocery store, we'd go, oh, I remember when you could get 10 for $1, and now they're $1 a piece."
I know.
So thinking about it, putting my MBA hat on, a penny could be worth a lot of money back in the day.
Yeah, no, it wasn't then either. It was more significant than a penny today, but we're still talking about the smallest amount, right?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was a time when people would go crazy over a penny. I don't know. I think usually people use the term penny to describe a very insignificant amount of money.
Regardless, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's, Benjamin Franklin's statement, if you save a penny a day, that kind of thing. But I think the point that he's making is that the penny itself may not be worth very much, but if you keep adding it up, it gets to be significant. So
Okay, got it.
I think they're just using it as an example of an insignificant amount.
Okay.
Yeah, you follow me. But no, I appreciate the question. Okay, so let me keep going. All right, so about this connection he's making. Ulefi hamavuar debedor hamabul gazlu davar she'en yotze bedayanim. I'm going to translate all of that. So, and because it has been cleared, right? And what was clarified? That regarding the generation of the flood, they would steal something that would not be, you couldn't take to court, you couldn't lay a claim. V'nifra HaKadosh Baruch Hu hamehem, but nevertheless, the Holy One, blessed be He, held them accountable, right? And basically it's saying, punish them, that God punished them for this. Lachein omrim, and for this reason they say, lazeh she'eino omed b'diburo, that someone who does not honor his commitments, right? Mi shepara me'anshe hador. That's why they use this particular phraseology. The one who punished or held accountable the people of the generation of the flood. Afalpi, despite the fact she'avru al davar she'eno yotze b'dayanim, that is, even though they transgressed something which you cannot take to court, it's below a standard by which you can take it to court. Hu yifara mipi she'eno omed biduro. God will then hold accountable someone who does not honor their commitments or hold by their word, stand by their word. She'af, and literally stand by their word, by his word. She'af hu over al davar, because this person too is transgressing regarding something she'eno yotze b'dayanim, which cannot be taken to court. V'dok QED. Umashi amru od, and what they said beyond this. Umishe parama ein shai dor haflaga. There's another statement regarding punishment, right? The one who held accountable or who punished the people of the generation of the dispersion. That's the Tower of Babel story. Ume anshe Sodom, or the people of Sodom. Yesh alzeh, regarding those particular statements, right? Ta'amim miyuchadim. There are specific applications to those particular examples there. And this is where we will stop for today. And it actually was a significant passage that we were talking about, because as I said, this is something that is mentioned elsewhere. So let's mark, I'm just marking the space, and I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Any comments for the record before I stop the recording? Okay.